Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright, once again, you tee it up and he knocks it out the park. That's exactly what this man does. 10 out of 10 times. You know, it's a shame that Vivek Ramaswamy is running for president and that's all. It's unlikely that he actually wins the nomination, but he claimed that if he doesn't win, he's going back to the private sector. I don't know about you guys, but I'd love to see this guy as a senator or possibly a governor, because he's a political beast, a political titan. But at the same time, you know, I get it. If you possess that kind of intelligence, that kind of wit, that kind of skill, you're obviously better served in the private sector. But look, if he ends up making that decision, it's going to be a bit of a sad day. I think we're going to miss him. This man has been on a legendary media run. Doesn't happen very often, you know. For the most part, you see these politicians doing their little media tours, and it's either not newsworthy or just a total embarrassment. When it comes to Vivek, every single encounter, I mean, he is ending people's careers. Literally. He shut down Don Lemon so badly that Don Lemon hasn't been seen publicly since, after getting booted from CNN directly after his Vivek interview. Well, it seems like Vivek wants to add more names to the list, especially at CNN, this time making an appearance on Jim Acosta's show, where Jim was trying to trip him up, asking him hard-hitting questions. And as I stated earlier, Vivek knocked it out of the park completely. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so the first part of the encounter is actually pretty similar to a clip that we covered recently with Vivek, the one-on-one that he had with neocon Neil Cavuto. The establishment media so desperately wants to paint these indictments as legitimate, but Vivek Ramaswamy just isn't willing to feed into that narrative. No, he's gonna destroy that narrative. And also, keep in mind, even though Mr. Ramaswamy made his fortune developing healthcare products, or running a company rather that created healthcare products, he actually went to law school. Mr. Ramaswamy received his AB degree, summa cum laude, in biology from Harvard College and a JD degree from Yale Law School. Just to add some context, to add some authority to his analysis. Take a look.
Well, I think the former president is going to come up at the debate whether he's there or not, and he's now facing his fourth criminal indictment, this time in Georgia on forgery, false statements, election fraud, and racketeering charges. You have said that these are political or politicized prosecutions, politicized persecutions through prosecution. Let's listen to what his former attorney general is saying about this.
People who defend him say that he genuinely did feel that he was robbed, and this was the good fight and the proper fight.
Well, even if he did, and I am dubious about that, but even if he believed that, that doesn't mean you can use illegal means to rectify it. If you think the bank is unfairly keeping your money, there are many things you can do to get it back. You can't go and rob the bank.
Yeah, what's your response to the former attorney general?
Look, I think there are deep legal flaws with this case. I'm talking to you from the Nixon Presidential Library, where I'm delivering a speech later tonight. We'll look at Nixon versus Fitzgerald. This is something that the press has altogether ignored. A president's acts while in office are something that he actually enjoys immunity for, other than through the impeachment process. So if he believes, even incorrectly, that he was looking after election fraud, that alone could be a defense. I also think there are deep due process failures. Let's start with the fact that they actually, Fulton County, publicly posted the charges of the indictment even before the grand jury had signed them. That's a grave prosecutorial, bushy-tailed, overexcited mistake. That's a due process violation that itself could be grounds for a motion to dismiss. We also have to look at this prosecution in the context of the fact that there are three others, now four prosecutions in a series of months, all convening around a presidential election that sets a god-awful precedent, Jim, for this country. We do not want to become a nation where the party in power uses multiple different legal cases at the same time, pushing untested novel legal theories to knock out its opposition in the middle of a presidential election. That is not how we do things in the United States of America.
Yeah, let me jump in. There have been four different indictments. You don't think he's committed any crimes in any of these indictments?
I don't think any of the indictments have demonstrated that he committed a crime, no. And I've written on the pages of the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere wearing a technical legal hat, and you and I can go into that detail if you're interested.
Refusing to return classified documents?
Clearly politically motivated. Well, let's just take that one as an example. That indictment made zero mention of the Presidential Records Act, the most recently passed act that relates to a president, including an outgoing president's access to documents. The fact that this is a 49-page indictment, that was silent on that fact, reveals smacks of politicization. I also think that the fact that they use the Espionage Act, one of the most un-American acts in U.S. history, that has been used to round up anti-war activists, that was used to lock up Eugene V. Debs when he ran for president.
But do you think it's okay to have classified documents? You think it's okay for you to have classified documents laying around the Ramaswamy household?
No, it's not. But I think that there's a difference between a bad judgment and a crime. And the Presidential Records Act expressly
gives
the U.S.
president
and
asked for the documents back, and he didn't return them. They asked for the documents back.
Again,
and
I would have made very different judgments.
Yeah.
You know, he mentions a great point. We've been talking a whole lot about the Presidential Records Act. Many people, including Donald Trump, have used it as a defense, but I find it really interesting that the actual indictment, which is in fact an indictment related to presidential records and classified documents, doesn't mention the act even once. Maybe it's because they don't want to mention the act, since it probably puts a dagger in their pathetic, twisted legal theory, causing the whole thing to collapse. You could tell Jim Acosta's trying so hard to portray himself as just a neutral journalist, but the facts are the facts. But obviously he's got skin in the game to a certain extent. He absolutely despises Donald Trump. His entire media persona, the only reason he currently has a show is due to the fact that he developed name recognition going after Donald Trump for the 4 years that he was in office. And obviously in this exchange, he's trying very hard to play devil's advocate to justify these pathetic indictments. In my view, there is no justification. You could play as many clips of Bill Barr as you possibly want to indict a former sitting president over the retaining of his own presidential documents while being protected by the Presidential Records Act, and in that indictment, to not mention the Presidential Records Act even once, and on top of that, use some sort of twisted legal maneuver using the authoritarian Espionage Act to resurrect such a horrible legal relic of the past, in my opinion, once again proves that the indictment is far from legitimate, but rather a desperate political maneuver. Vivek hits the nail on the head once again. You know, they're expecting to cause him to trip up when asking these questions. But boy, is he ready for him. I think he's waiting for him. He's got him teed up, ready to swing his bat, hitting the target square on at max velocity. You know, that's what this guy does. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because what we've kind of grown accustomed to, what we're used to, is seeing cowardly neocons too scared to say the truth, too scared to question and challenge the official narrative. Here's another place where Vivek shows just how truly courageous he is on the topic of Ukraine and Russia.
And you've also suggested that Vladimir Putin be allowed to keep parts of Ukraine as part of a part of a way to solve that conflict. What if he wants parts of Poland?
You leave
next?
out the most important part of that deal.
More of Ukraine next.
Aren't
you letting some of these authoritarian leaders off the hook?
What actually advances? Far from it. I think that the Biden administration is so stubbornly attached to the idea of getting Xi Jinping to drop Vladimir Putin. What I think we need to be doing is get Vladimir Putin to drop Xi Jinping. Just like Nixon went to China in 1972, I think Putin is like the new Mao. I will visit Moscow, and I will pull Russia out of its military alliance with China. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest military threat that we face today. Hypersonic missile capabilities, nuclear capabilities in Russia, far ahead of us or China. A naval capacity in China ahead of ours, combined with an economy that we depend on for our modern way of life. Those two nations are in a military alliance with one another, and nobody in either political party is talking about it. Worst of all, our engagement in Ukraine is further driving Russia into China's arms. So my foreign policy centers on weakening that alliance. That advances American interests.
But you would let Putin have
that
parts of Ukraine.
That is how we actually secure peace.
But you would let Putin have parts of Ukraine.
I would freeze the current lines. I would freeze the current lines of control, and that would leave parts of the Donbass region with Russia. I would also further make a commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. But there are even greater wins that I will get for the United States in return. The top of the list. No, our goal should not be for Putin to lose. Our goal should be for America to win. That's what we have forgotten in this country, is that Driving Russia into the ground is not a U.S. strategic goal.
And of course, in the comments section of this video, which Jim Acosta posted himself to Twitter, you see all these Democrat and some conservative establishment thinking self-proclaimed geopolitical geniuses trashing Mr. Ramaswamy for his take here. How dare he say that our goal should not be for Putin to lose? Putin war crimes, my Putin war crimes. Nobody's actually listening to the guy. They're just having an emotional reaction. But Putin's supposed to be evil. We're the good guy. We're the good guy. This is Russian propaganda. Blah, blah, blah. Not an argument. What Vivek is saying, once again, is not only courageous, but in my opinion is correct. The goal should be to find some sort of diplomatic unity, and not to send Russia into China's arms. To not sow and enable further global chaos, but to finally find an end to the conflict in Ukraine that's having devastating shockwave impacts. Tucker Carlson just met with the Serbian president, who said that the war in Ukraine has crushed the European economy. The goal in the narrative is that Russia's economy is being crushed. We've seen no evidence to suggest that. Meanwhile, we're seeing the president of Serbia claiming that the European economy is being crushed. And the other narrative is that Russia somehow is losing or their forces are being depleted. We've seen once again no evidence of that, but what we have seen evidence of is a complete Ukrainian slaughter. The most recent reports state incredible destruction. Ukraine loses 31 vehicles and 7,000 men, liberating 2 small villages, adding to the toll of hundreds of thousands either deceased or injured. Oh, Putin bad, Putin bad, Putin bad. Somehow, Vivek is the bad guy for calling for a diplomatic end to this nonsense. There is no winning and losing here. The leftist establishment perspective is callous, heartless, and binary. Anyways, I don't want to go on and on about the war in Ukraine. I think we've covered it enough, and I think I've also made the point. Vivek's on a roll. I mean, it's no wonder he's on an absolute tear. It's no wonder he's doing so incredibly well in the polls. The guy's a political dynamo, an absolute genius intellect, and he continues to completely obliterate bogus establishment narratives. You love to see it. That's what I got for you guys, though. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. You know we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.